something that you think is making somebody uncomfortable, just make sure that you address it up front. Not in a mean way, not in a, super confrontational way, but say, hey, George, I understand that you were trying to be funny. That's not cool. And that will let those people know that you care and that you truly want to make sure there's a safe space, and they will come back and they will become engaged.
Faye, you want to go next?
So I think it's just about being intentional. We all remember what it felt like to be a new member. And I think if we can offer, a buddy system, making sure that we're pairing our more veteran members up with our new members so they know what to expect. They feel comfortable. They feel safe going to something. I know going to my first event, I didn't know a single person, and it was very intimidating, but I found somebody who took me under their wing and just made me feel comfortable about where I was at, because I was very young, and there were a lot of people who were much older than me, and I just wasn't really sure about it at that point in time. But I think being intentional about giving our new members especially that treatment right off the bat of let's make you feel safe, let's pair you up, let's give you somebody who's been around, who's been a veteran, understands the organization, and can show you the ropes so that you have somebody you can go to when you have questions, if you have concerns. And if you see something, say something. I think that kind of goes back to what Chris was just saying. If you see something, say something. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't, and you need to make sure that the leadership's aware and they can help address the situation so that our members always feel safe in our environment.
Maylee will do this. We'll take Maylee, then we'll move on.
So my answer was going to be a lot like Faye's. I really believe in the buddy system. It really helped our chapter thrive with the new members and get them engaged, because we partnered them with a veteran member. Also made sure that it wasn't their friend that recruited them, because sometimes you get just a biased kind of story and this is how we do it, versus someone who has a different viewpoint and can also share differently. And because sometimes when it's your friend, you assume that someone just kind of understands and knows, and that person will kind of not feel confident enough to kind of ask you more details, more questions, versus someone who they are paired with. And it really does make someone feel welcomed in a safe space to kind of voice their opinions, their questions, and anything that will get them more engaged and more attentive. And I really agree with make sure that everything you tell them is intentional, because we have that JC vomit where we kind of throw a lot of information at them, but it's not necessarily what they need to know now, and overwhelming and overloading someone with information can also make them take a step back too. So very intentional words and information at specific times.
Thank you, everyone. And so our second question is one that is actually very important to me, and is, what role do you think partnerships play in recruiting members with diverse background? And we will start with past President Pickleman.
Thank you, Kymi. Good morning, friends from JCI, Michigan. Coming from a chapter that does really large projects, we have a lot of partnerships with local business and with government. And going to these businesses and consistently asking them for sponsorship, it feels like a one-way street. So I've always approached it as, do you have employees that could use some leadership guidance and hone their leadership and management skills? And one of the most successful stories that I can give, I guess, is I was having dinner with one of the business owners and asked her, hey, I'm a JC, would you like to come check us out? And you're of the perfect age for becoming a member. And she said, no, I just don't have the time. I run 3 businesses. I said, do you have any employees? She goes, well, I'm getting ready to hire an assistant manager. I said, perfect. Is there any way you can write that into her contract as an employee that she needs to be a JC member? And lo and behold, it took a while, but she became our president last year. So just asking if they have any people of 21 to 40 years of old age as employees and offering the benefits of management and leadership development, it can go a long way so that it is a true partnership and we're not just having a one-way street. And just going to different businesses, it brings diverse backgrounds of professionalism so that you have a well-rounded chapter.
And we'll go to Ariana King next.
I believe Pickle did a great job answering that full question, but I will add, just for diverse things for Kalamazoo or any other chapter, partnering with a POC organization will assist us in recruiting members that do not necessarily look like our entire body. So just making sure that we are being very intentional in obtaining those different organizations to come and do trainings so we're getting the correct information to our members.
What about you, Gabe? You have input on that?
I do. I think that this is the most important and oftentimes overlooked part of recruiting diverse members. So I'm going to take kind of a different angle on it, though, than the previous answers. I think a lot of times when we think about diverse recruiting, we get frustrated because we don't know where to start. We know we want diverse members, but we only know how to recruit the people that we've already recruited. So I challenge people to be productive in replacing your goal. So obviously we all want to recruit diverse members, but if we flip that starting point and instead think of how we can have diverse members and how we can provide value to diverse segments of our communities. So instead of just having members in our organization, as an organization, we can go out to organizations that are diverse compared to our chapters, and we can think our goal isn't necessarily to integrate people into our chapter, it's to integrate your chapter into diverse communities. And I think a part of this that's so important is that as JCs, we all love the JCs and we all know the value of the JCs, but there's a certain hubris to it where we think that our value is the one that all of our members that we have established should be reaching towards. And if we get rid of that hubris and instead say, we are here to help a diverse organization and partner with you, not so you come to us, but so we come to you. So if an African American or Black community organization has a Juneteenth celebration, your chapter could go and say, hey, we'll do the grunt work. We don't want to come and do a training. We don't want to come and talk about the JCs. You don't even have to have our name on a banner or anything. Let us clean up afterwards. If you have an Asian American group that's having an event or celebration, you can do the same and say, look, what don't your members want to do? I don't know about all chapters, but in Redford, everyone in the community knows that we'll do the grunt work. That's why we have parks. That's why we do cleanups. Let's spread that out to, not just predominantly white institutions. And those partnerships, or we say we are the junior partner in this relationship, creates a sustainable pipeline for diverse recruiting.
What about you, Chris? You have thoughts?
Actually, so a lot of what I was going to say is along the lines of what Gabe was saying, because when you're reaching out to diverse organizations, and when I think of Michigan, aside from Metro Detroit, there's not a whole lot of diversity. So talking to all the different presidents and membership VPs, they're like, well, Chris, yeah, we want to be more diverse, but like everybody around here looks like us, right? So if we reach out to other organizations that do have people that are of different backgrounds, different nationalities, and build trust, right? Because a lot of times I feel like people come into these organizations and they try to be the savior. And people resent that. Like, don't come in like, we know best, we know better. We'll come in, be humble, like Gabe was saying. And come in with the intent of service, right? And when the intent is there, you will earn the trust, you'll build the trust, and then you can work on building a cohesive relationship, and that's how we get to be more diverse. So that's exactly where my thoughts were headed off of what Gabe was saying.
Okay, so we have, in the interest of time, can we move on? Because the next one's a two-parter. What are some successful ways you've been recruiting and retaining members who have come from different background, careers, and places in life? So let's start with Faye. Okay?
So this question is extremely timely. I had the opportunity to attend a diversity and inclusion conference this week for work, and one of the sessions I went to, I've talked to a few people about it. It was so impressive, and the focus was actionable allyship. And the biggest takeaway I had from this was who's at the table. When you look at your table, your chapter, who is there? More importantly, who is not there? You have to be thoughtful about who you're inviting to the table. And are you creating exclusions in who you're inviting? And once they're at the table, how are you acting? What's happening at the table? And so when I think about that from a recruitment standpoint is, are we being thoughtful about, do we want everybody to continue to look like us and come from the same background as us? Or do we want diversity in thought, diversity in experience, diversity in background, which to me makes a much stronger, much healthier, more thriving chapter when you have all those different backgrounds coming together? Because I don't want someone who's going to go along with everything I say. I want someone who's going to challenge me and say, well, let me tell you about my experience and how that plays into what we're thinking about doing for our chapter and how we can make this successful and how we can integrate this into our community. So when I think about, recruiting diverse individuals or being thoughtful about the diversity of our recruitment, I really think it's being intentional about who's at our table, but who's not at the table, and how do we get those invitations to those who are not at the table. And spoiler teaser, there's going to be a little bit more conversation around this during the business meeting membership report, so stay tuned for that.
Looks like Gabe's ready to go next.
Follow up is, I think, the best advice. I can give an example. We're currently trying to recruit an entire credit union to get all of their members to join the Redford JCs. And the reason for that is because the kindness rally. So we have a project that involves a lot of people in the community. And every year, I think that we've done the kindness rally, Community Choice has shown up with a team of entirely women, primarily women of color. And they know us, we know them. I bet half our members bank with them. And it's just following up. So it's a process. So someone comes to an event, someone comes, you're pouring beer at a festival, you're handing out food somewhere, and you make a connection, follow up and keep following up to show that their membership is important to you as well.
And what about retention?
I'll speak on that. So when it comes to retention, I believe we should be very intentional about the events that we hold. Some members do not like to drink, so we need to make sure we are having those events that are dry events to allow them to feel safe and comfortable in coming. We do not know everyone's background when it comes to drinking and having just different things around. So we need to be very intentional about our events and also switch it up. Some people do not like to do things that we do every day. So let's be intentional in making sure we change up our normal events.
And Chris, what are your thoughts on retaining since you are our MVP?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that I've reached out to the members that dropped or left the organization over the past year, finding that they just didn't feel, they weren't getting attention. They weren't being reached out to, like when little things like milestones, like if you see somebody got a new job or had a new baby or they're married or things like that, sending a little card costs like 50 cents, right? You can get 2 for $1 at the dollar store. Those little things are the things that keep people. Those are the things that when things get hard, they can look to. Like, I'm loved, I'm cared about, and I'm seen. We don't necessarily have to have all the amazing, great events. We don't need to spend a lot of money. We don't need to be fancy with it. Just a simple phone call or text message check-in. Hey, Dave, how are you doing? I saw that this happened. Are you okay? Would you like to talk about it? And not just when it's time to get the check, right? I think that everybody hates bill collectors. I know I do. So I think that reaching out to people when they're not up for renewal and just doing a hey, hello, how are you is huge in terms of retention.
Bailey, do you have thoughts on that? Or the question in general?
So, excuse me. Yes, and a lot of it is what kind of already been said. The follow-up is a really big part after you have that initial conversation with someone on giving them information about the JCs. You don't want to pressure them on the spot to sign up right now. So following up, see how they're feeling, thinking about joining, and then I like to do one-on-one, like kind of like coffee sessions with people and finding out their goals and why they joined the JCs and making sure that we have little checkpoints throughout the year, making sure that is being fulfilled for them. If they're wanting to connect more with people, make sure that they go to socials. If they're wanting to take advantage more of JCI trainings, and improve their leadership skills. Or even we've had a lot of people who want to learn project management skills or speaking skills. Well, we forget to make sure that they come to a convention that has competition. We forget to have them be part of something so simple of even just like introducing someone that is a guest. That can be like a baby step for them to do a public speaking versus like you're going to do a whole speech at a convention, because that is going to scare someone and they're not going to even attempt to try anymore if you're just going to put them on the spot like that. So a lot of it is also taking baby steps versus some people aren't comfortable with just jumping right in. So making sure that they have baby steps or little stepping stones to help them instead, so that we can make sure that people do feel comfortable, feel safe, they're moving at a pace that they can handle. And retention, I do agree with Chris. I do the same thing. I send out cards. I send out little messages like, hey, this happened to me today. It reminded me of you. Just little things like that can really make someone's day and just make people feel special because you're thinking of them. And so that keeps me around. I know it'll keep some people around.
Mr. Pickleman?
So I think our organization is at a great opportunity spot in our time. We just got through, no one really being able to do a whole lot of anything last year with COVID. And we've run the same programming and projects in our chapters for a lot of years. And one of the things that I've always talked about is know the culture of your chapter. I've seen it too often, I guess, where we run our programming and then we run a program that's outside of what the culture of our typical day-to-day chapter life is. AKA, maybe you're in a chapter that doesn't have a lot of families, but you run the Easter egg hunt and you have a community survey and you ask people to join. Those people join and then there's nothing for them until the next Easter egg hunt. And that really doesn't help with retaining those members. So with the ability right now, we can rewrite our programming within our chapters and change what we do so that we can attract and retain the diverse members. And that, to me, is one of the best things about coming out of this pandemic, that we can, wipe the board clean and rewrite what we do as chapters.
Thank you. So I think we're ready to take questions. Carol is going to go into the field. I think this was a hard.
What's up, Blue Room? Oh, we got a question over here from Jacqueline Leary. You're just waving? You don't have nothing? Does anyone in this room have a question for our esteemed panel? Cool. Well, Sam, we have Samantha Jonas from Greater Muskegon.
So you guys talked a lot about going out and being intentional, but what are those icebreakers? How do we approach those organizations if we don't have those relationships?
So the easiest way is to walk in, I would say take somebody with you, and if you can, walk into their building. So for example, if you want to go to an NAACP office, I don't know, obviously it's Metro Detroit type of thing, but something of that nature, right? And you go in there, maybe you bring somebody else with you so you feel more comfortable because you're not alone, and just say, hey, my name is Chris, I'm a membership vice president for your chamber. Explain to them who you are, have a business card or something that shows what your organization does, and make sure that you've done your homework in advance. Hey, I noticed that you guys are passionate about this, and we were wondering how we can help support this mission. Make sure that you're tying the JCI values into their values so that they can see the value. You're not just coming in trying to gain attention or notoriety or anything like that. They truly know that you're there to be a partner. And it may take several meetings. It may take several phone calls. It may take several emails. It may not be something that where it's done in a year, but that's how you get the process started.
So, of course, following Chris, he basically said a lot of what I was going to say is be intentional, and also just be honest. Let people know that you're there to learn, to open your mind. You want to learn more about their background, their life experiences, and their passion, and align what they're interested in with the JC values, and that's how you can learn to partner and just bring more light into the differences, and show your passion, and know that you have the same end goal of kind of shining out. Or now I lost my thought because he kind of stole all what I was going to say. It's just be honest and just let them know that you are there to learn. You are there to not just like recruit members, but there are more opportunities.
Anybody else? Gabe, go ahead.
So I think we think a lot about benefits to membership when we're talking to our members and trying to retain and recruit. And I think we can also think about benefits to partnership. And I think people have been right on when it's not, the benefit to partnership is not your people can be members of our organization. So it's about researching, going in and talking to people, and being honest about what our organization can do to provide a benefit to that partnership. And it's going to be unique, and it should be based on what that group does, because that shows that you're interested and that this is an organization that we can be partners with, and we don't just view diverse organizations as feeder organizations for our membership, which is kind of insulting if you think about it. Or you don't even really have to think about it.
All right. Carol Pickleman reporting here from the Green Ballroom. Do we have any questions in here for our panelists? All right. Oh, we're good. Oh. All right. Blue Room, is that a wave or a question, Jacqueline? Okay, great. Here you go.
How do you address the problem of the members that don't want change? They're comfortable with how the chapters are already existing. How do you convince them that change, new membership diversity is good and beneficial for the chapter?
Chris?
So what I would say is, I would appeal to their selfishness, right? Like, they love the JCs, right? They want them to be around. So I'd explain to them, like, you know what? I totally get that this is the organization that you've came up in. This is how you feel comfortable. However, do you want this organization to be around in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And was this organization different when you came in? Heck, when obviously when I was born, the chapter didn't even allow women. My dad wanted to be a JC back in the 60s in Detroit and was told he could not because he was a person of color. After he came back from Kalamazoo going to Western, he came back to Detroit and was not allowed to be a JC. There's a lot of things that life changes, right? The world changes, society changes, and if we want to be an organization in the future, we need to change what we're doing so that we can be viable and sustainable in the future. So I understand that this is outside of your comfort zone, but for the good of the organization that you love, we need to make some adjustments and some changes. And I think that's a way that you can get to those people that do not want change.
I think something to add on to that is that, the world is constantly changing, right? We all had to adjust last year when we were in the midst of a global pandemic, which we hadn't experienced in 100 years or whatever it might have been. But the fact is, as we continue to recruit new members into our organization, we're going to get new perspective, new ideas, new excitement. And that should already start to change the dynamics of your chapter and what you're offering. So by continuing to recruit those new members, those new ideas, those new experiences should automatically start to change the makeup and the DNA of what you're doing as a chapter. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important to continuously recruit new members for that new excitement, those new ideas, because if we don't change, as Chris just said, the organization will not be around. We still live by the same values that Henry Giesenbier laid out when he started this organization over 100 years ago, but we've adjusted how we meet that mission and how we live those values, but we still subscribe to those things every single day. So continuously recruiting those new members with different backgrounds, with different ideas, so that we can continuously change. It doesn't have to be fast change, it can be slow change, but it has to be change.
Carol, I think we have a question right behind you. Unless, does somebody else want to?
Three questions in this room.
Three questions.
Was this yours, Jen? All right.
So as you mentioned, Chris, with trying to get diversity and inclusion in chapters that have been in existence, what advice would you have for somebody in the leadership role having that conversation with a member who's being resistant, perhaps an aged out member like a senator? How do you have that conversation to make everybody at the table feel comfortable and there's not a huge conflict, if that makes any sense?
No, it makes absolute sense. And I can tell you what I've done with problematic members of my chapter in the past. And it's not always the popular opinion, but sometimes you just need to tell people they need to leave. Like, honestly, like, okay, you don't like black people, you don't like brown people, you don't like people that are not like you. That's cool. You're aged out. Oh, great. You're not a member of this organization anymore. So your opinion, therefore, does not count. And it sounds mean, but sometimes you have to be direct. I know at my year end, I dealt with some things from some former JCs that was not fun. And I know that I told them, and they were senators or, long overdue people. And so I'm like, quite frankly, like, we don't accept that. Like, you're mad because, like, the one guy was railing about women being JCs. And I had to tell him, like, that's not appropriate. We're not going to have this conversation. If you don't like what we're doing, you don't have to come around. And we didn't have an issue after that. He still comes around, comes to the barbecue every year. Doesn't rant about women anymore. Sometimes you just need to tell people where you stand. So that's what I would say is, especially people that are no longer members of the organization or they're aged out, technically, like, their opinion should not count. We're 21 to 40. Now, if they are an of-age member, sometimes it stinks to lose a member, but if their values do not align with the chapter, we can't let one bad apple ruin the whole bunch. So we'll try to adjust them, we'll try to educate them, try to educate first, but if they can't educate or will not be educated, it's time for them to leave. I'd rather lose one member and gain 50. So that's my answer.
So, hi.
Hi. Gabe had a response.
Yeah, sorry, if I can just give a quick answer real quick. Sorry. I think one way that you might avoid the situation and try to educate, like Chris said, I think is to have an organizational focus when you speak to resistant members. So instead of talking about individually about them, talk about your organization. And I think you can be frank that if our organization remains as homogenous as it is now, that's an existential threat to our organization. The JCs will not exist in 20, 25 years absent change. So I think telling people that and have an organizational structure and say, we all love, like Chris said, we all love the JCs. There's a reason that you're so emotionally involved in this organization, and I am too. And my goal is that your kids can be JCs, or your grandkids can be JCs, or your great-grandkids can be JCs. And right now, that opportunity won't exist. And I think that helps smooth over the discussion a little bit.
Okay, hi. So let me start out by saying how proud I am that of the six speakers on our panel, 5 are people of color. As the first person of color to serve as a state president in Michigan, I know firsthand the pressure it is to be a person of color, be one of the few persons of color in an organization. I'm not quite sure a lot of folks in the organization really have an appreciation for the pressure that is on Chris or on Ariana or on Miley or Gabe or even myself. Could you share a little bit about that pressure we feel as being that black guy in the room?
Ooh.
Absolutely. So, and I'm going to try to give it in a way that people can understand. So, like, if a non-person of color makes a mistake or does something, it doesn't represent their entire nationality, their religion, or anything of that nature, right? It just represents that person. I feel the pressure of whenever I do something, it doesn't just represent Chris. It represents Black men in general. And people come to you for things like anything to do with, and I don't mind answering questions and educating people, but it's a little bit tough that when anything comes up with anything to do with anybody of color, they come to you for a spotlight for a question or for an answer. And whatever I say on that given day is taken as what the millions of African Americans in this country feel and believe. And a lot of times that's not true, right? Chris is Chris. Like, there are things that I love and I believe in that other people don't. And it almost feels like I have to give a answer that is for like, that can like kind of cover the most people. And almost it feels like I can almost not be myself sometimes because I have to make sure that, especially when it comes to things, I can say the same exact thing that somebody else says, the same wording, the same tone and everything, and I'm considered aggressive or things of that nature, and it's hard. So I have to be extra nice, extra soft, extra, and it's a constant thing. Like, you can't let sometimes you feel like you can't let your hair down. I've been blessed with some people the people in this room and a lot of people here that have let me feel comfortable, but it's not often the case. So yeah, like the pressure of knowing that I'm representing the entire nationality and I'm supposed to be the answer for a lot of things. It's a lot. It's really hard. But I love what I do. I love the organization, so I'm willing to continue to try working through it. Does that answer?
Ari?
I think Chris answered perfect. I'm going to add on to that.
Haley? Oh, I got the.
So yes, I have had experiences similar to Chris, and it really, sometimes I really do have to kind of look in the mirror and gain my confidence back, because sometimes, this really hits my heart, where, you try not to think of it as someone speaking to you in a different light just because you are a person of color. But in reality, some people do it without even knowing. And there's a lot of stereotypes that people will put you in a certain box. And so you feel like you can't be yourself because you don't want to either give into that stereotype. You don't want to be seen in as that Asian girl that kind of does the weird things or says the weird things or eats the weird things. It's also just, it is a lot about having those conversations with someone, like, and letting them know, like, in my culture, we do this because of this. It's kind of like a religion where some people go pray differently. They go to church differently. It's, when I grew up in my household, we had rice with almost every meal, and I'd go over to my friend's house and I didn't even think about it, like, where's the rice? I just see meat and potatoes. So, I mean, even it's on both sides where we kind of have to learn about each other's culture, about each other's backgrounds and why we do things. And that's the number one thing, is people think it's weird or odd because they don't have that background information on why certain religions pray 3 to 5 times a day. Some cultures do things a certain way. It's really learning and educating and making sure that you are open, and that if you say something that might have been insensitive, be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way, but it probably, or like, I didn't intentionally mean it that way even, and then just making sure that you don't leave it at that. It's, so tell me more, tell me why, I need to know so that I don't make this same thing an issue again. And I could go on this all day, but I'll let it go.
So I'll preface this by saying that my experience with this is very different because I pass as white. So majority of people will presume that I'm white because that's less scary. So I have a different perspective, I think. But one thing that I think is really big, and this is more from growing up than in the JCs, and it was repeated by a close friend of mine in this organization who's breaking down a ton of barriers, And she said to me, Gabe, I would just like to not be the first. She's like, I would like to be able to do what I'm doing in this organization as everyone else did, and prefer to not be the first. And I think people don't understand, and it's been spoken to here by everybody, the burden and the responsibility of being first and how that can wear on somebody, even the simplest things. So you could say to someone, oh my God, you're the first, Black president of this organization. Oh my God, that's so cool. And to them, half of it, or even more than half of it, is it's terrifying. It's horrifying. It's scary. So just remember that as you're kind of interacting with leaders and members who are diverse, I think, is that they're going through a scary thing because of their uniqueness and diversity that a lot of people don't understand. And even some people of color don't have to deal with as much because it's all about what we look like, unfortunately. So.
All right, we have a question from President Adam.
In giving timing, I think this is going to be the last question of the morning. Vice President Chris made a comment earlier, and I think that I just want to make sure we touch back on it because I thought it was really important and really key, no matter in what arena we're trying to recruit a more diverse background, and that was the importance of doing homework. Can a couple of you speak to examples of what that means? What are we talking about when we're saying we need to do our homework?
Yeah, the easiest thing in this world of technology is doing a Google search, looking up the organization, like going to their website, looking at their history, because everybody's got an About Us section, right? So you'll get to know about the organization, you'll get to know about their history. And when you take that information into account, then also look at other sources, right? See what other people are saying about this organization. Make sure that you're not just taking their word for it because you never really know, right? So obviously looking at multiple sources, talking to people who are associated with that organization, maybe find out somebody who's there, ask them if you can buy a coffee, a beer, whatever, sit down, have a conversation with, like, what are their struggles? What are their things? What are their focuses? I don't know, kind of like a research paper in school, right? You learn about the organization before you pick up the phone, before you walk in their door. I think it's a sign of respect.
I think one of the things that you can do is find out, where the commonalities exist. Our organization is extremely vast. We are international, and we have just a humongous network of people. If you think about our not only active members, but our senators, our alumni, figure out if there is a common thread there between yourself and somebody from that organization and ask for an introduction. Don't be afraid to leverage that relationship to say, hey, I'd really like to get to know more about this person at this organization. Can you introduce me? I use LinkedIn quite a lot in my professional career, and I am connected with so many people that a lot of them I don't actually know, but just through business connections, we've stayed connected because you never know when those relationships are going to come in. So continuously build and expand that network and leverage those relationships when you see an opportunity. Chances are there's at least one common thread there somewhere. Leverage it and just continue to network.
Yeah, I think. Oh, Gabe?
Sorry, going back to the idea of like academic research, field research. So before you go and talk to an organization, go to one of their events, participate. So then you can say, not only did I look you up on the internet, not only am I here at a meeting, I've already hung out with y'all. I went to this event, this is what I did, I thought it was awesome, and show that. So do the field research as well.
And I think Mealy wanted to say something.
Mealy? Okay.
And in this great world of technology, there's also a lot of blogs, a lot of stories, papers written that people have shared online that share their experience on certain topics. And, you do have to take it as a grain of salt because not everybody's experience is going to be the same or described in the same way, but it gives you some sort of idea. You might learn like one little tidbit about that culture or religion or any background, and a lot of those, most people do share similar feelings when presented in certain situations and stuff, and some people are more open to write a story about it, share it on a blog, TikTok, Instagram, and so doing that type of research also can help, but also just make sure that you understand that that's that person's specific story, but it can also give you a little wider picture.
Great. Thank you all so much. Can we get a round of applause for our panel this morning? I want to echo what past President Dave said and just say that it is really amazing and certainly shows how far we have come, though we have much work to do still on the diversity that we do have represented on this panel this morning. So thank you all so much for agreeing to do this today. Kymi, thank you so much for the work that you are doing as our Diversity and Inclusion Task Force Chair and your wonderful work this morning in chairing this panel. And I think just kind of in closing thoughts here, one of the things that was running through my mind as many of you were speaking today is at the end of the day, people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And that at the end of the day is a great part of what we're talking about, is that people want to know that you view them as people and that we want every voice to be represented at the table. So thank you all very much. Thank you, JCI Michigan, and we will see you back in 10 minutes for the business meeting. 10 minutes.